Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Ray Esports Racing League here on Apex Racing TV. My name is Ron Mullins. Joining me in the virtual commentary booth is Charles Bichelle, and in the production hall we have our old buddy Josh Wilkie. Fuddy, that's a very interesting word. We're inventing new words here in the Ray Esports Racing League. You join us here tonight at the Wine Country Roller Coaster of Sonoma Raceway, where the ladies and gentlemen from the Ray Esports Racing League will do battle here in the Formula Cars and the MX-5s. First up, here's the Formula Cars, where there's plenty of chances for these drivers to make a mistake at track with very little asphalt runoff. So to pass this off to you, Charles, do you think this race is going to be one of attrition, or do you think these drivers are going to decide to take it a little bit easier here tonight?
Well, Ron, thanks for having me in. I think it's going to be one of those where they're going to start pretty easy because we don't run this track very often. This is primarily, IndyCar runs here. NASCAR, obviously, this is one of their 2 or 3 road courses they run every season. So it doesn't come up on the schedule that often. It's one of those low usage tracks. So I think they'll probably just kind of take it easy and work their way into some pace on the track. Be a little careful because, as you said, there's not a lot of asphalt now. However, the iRacing, off-track, friction modeling has been vastly improved thanks to iRacing for that. So, if you get off in the dirt, the car will slow down and there'll be a lot less likelihood of you hitting a wall. However, you will slow down and lose quite a bit of time. So maybe it's just better to take it easy, maybe be a second or two off the pace and just kind of build it up as you go.
I'll tell you what, at a track like this, we're going to see plenty of drivers at least dipping, maybe just one wheel, sometimes even 2. It would be very unfortunate if we saw some drivers dip all 4 wheels into that basically dead grass here surrounding this Sonoma track. There are 12 corners that these drivers are going to be negotiating here on this layout. It's a little bit confusing the way this track is numbered in terms of the corners here. We've got 3A, we've got 8A, we've got a whole bunch of different letters and associated with numbers. It's a little bit confusing from my perspective. You can tell I didn't graduate at the top of my class, but right now what is a concern is right now Zachary Rivard up at the front of the Formula Ford category. He is a driver that we always expect to run up towards the front of the Formula Ford class, and he is proving it quite nicely right now. We're following him going through 3 and 3A. There's that very dastardly 3A that I mentioned earlier before they go into the carousel. Turn 4, that's a big thing with the Ray Esports Racing League. Whenever they run here at Sonoma, they always pick the layout with the carousel. They don't go with a NASCAR short chute that was implemented back in 1997, so they always go through this small little meander here to get spat back out onto the ending stage. Actually, there's a shutdown area of the drag race whenever NHRA pops up here occasionally. I don't even know if NHRA actually races here anymore, but they go onto that back straightaway and enter this turn 7, which is a little bit longer. It's really just 2 corners disguised there, 2 corners masquerading as one single hairpin, but that's going to be a really good overtaking opportunity for the drivers here tonight. But I think another one could be turn 11 here, so there's some good overtaking opportunities here. What do you think is going to be the most used one here, Charles?
Yeah, I think 11 is probably the best bet. It's the real tight hairpin. It's the final corner, more or less. It's the final corner of the lap as we're coming up to it now. It's the heaviest braking zone on the track, as you see car getting slowed down. And if you pick the right line, I was watching some of the practice before qualifying, and I did see a couple cars come through there side by side, and it looked like if you hit the outside line properly, you could get a really good run out of that and get a good run through the little kink of 12 back to the start finish line and carry that speed up into turn 1. So it'll be interesting to see how the drivers negotiate that hairpin. I think also probably you can see some passing here at 7, because I just think there's people that are just going to get it wrong. As you said, it's less of a hairpin and more of a double apex right-hander. We'll call it that. But it is, like, as you see with a car spinning there, to prove my point. It is difficult to just this whole track is difficult. It's one of those tracks that, because of the elevation and the way the corners are designed, lots of blind corners here. As you're cresting hills into corners, so it is a challenging track, and so if you haven't put a little bit of work into it to really get all the corner sided, you can be off in that dead grass very, very quickly.
I think we're in for a pretty good race here at a track which is fairly challenging from my perspective, and I'm sure a lot of these drivers are feeling the burn with the challenge here so far in this qualifying session. We're 9 minutes 55 coming up to the 10-minute mark right about now, so we have about 5 minutes left to go here in this 15-minute session. It's currently Zach Rivard at the front of the Formula Ford category, and that's Tom Laurie at the front of the Formula Vs, which is actually that top time right now in the Formula Vs is actually a little bit slower than the top time in practice. There's drivers breaking into the 151s there in practice, so that was a pretty good lap time from them. A little bit colder conditions because the series runs a little bit more realistic time, so the practice sessions are run in the morning in iRacing, so it has those colder temperatures all around the track, so those cars are producing a little bit more horsepower. That we're running this qualifying session here in the afternoon. The race is coming up later on this evening in terms of the iRacing weather. Of course, here the race is coming up in just a few moments' time. But I think while we're in this qualifying session, we may ride on board with some of the Formula Vs, because this is something that was always in the back of my mind, but I never really put it all together until I was riding on board with some of these drivers during the practice session. So if we could switch to some roll hoop cameras here, I just want to outline this real quick. If you look at it would be the AIM, I guess it would be a Micron 5, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen plenty of go-karts run with a Micron 5 there. It looks very similar, so I'll just call it the Micron 5. You can see this one here, Jim Brewster, running the red background lights. You can change, I think there's about 7 or 8 different settings that you can run with the color display on the background there, so it's nice to see all these drivers have their own little personal preference. We're following Seth Spolman with the blue background. Again, there's a whole lot of colors that all these drivers are running. I've seen some drivers running purple. It's a very nice little smorgasbord, you could say. That's a word I've never mentioned on Apex Broadcast. A nice smorgasbord of colors that they can have for their little display there, so they can check their revs, what gear they're in, all the source. We can't really see it there because of iRacing. They blank out all that information for us, but all those drivers inside these cars will have all the relevant information they need to try and go as fast as they can in this qualifying session. But speaking of those displays inside the race car, they are part of the AIM system, and one of the biggest retailers of the AIM systems in the world of American racing right now is actually Trailbreak.com, one of the proud partners of this series. In the world of racing, telemetry is important in understanding your car and your driving, and it's why many people in the market take their butts over to Trailbreak.com. Trailbreak has been in the racing data world since 2000. Considering that's about 4 years older than me, I can vouch that's more than enough time for them to build a fantastic catalog of products. Whether you're in the world of karting, autocross, hill climbs, road racing, or track days, there's something there to help you go faster. To shop or just explore all the wonderful offers they have, head on over to Trailbreak.com. Trailbreak.com is a sponsor of the Formula V's and a proud partner of the Ray Esports Racing League. I was trying to figure out the nomenclature I'd use to describe the drivers, going with their own sort of colors here. I think it would be, well, I wouldn't call the race drivers finicky, but all racing car drivers have their own little unique quirks and features. Superstitious, yeah, that could be it.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. So, and color coordinated. So if you see Josh Justice here with a blue car, the blue background on his Micron 5. So great segue. Love that. Part two, it shows you the level of detail iRacing puts into these models when they get them built. Because a normal sim company could just say, oh yeah, we're just going to give it the monochrome green background with black numbering or black digits and go with that. But no, they said, you know what? These actually have 7 different color schemes, and we're gonna code it so it's got seven different color schemes. So that's pretty cool. So so it's one of those little touches that iRacing adds. That always adds that level of realism to the car.
I'm actually going through the setup page in iRacing because you can change it in the setup page. They have gray, cyan, blue, green, yellow, red, and purple. Those are all the colors that you can select for the background display there in the car. In my old go-kart, it had a Micron 4 on there, and they only had 2 settings, just normal, no color on the background, and then they had green, which I always thought was cool. It made me feel like a fighter pilot in my go-kart, so maybe some drivers might have to use the color green after this broadcast. But as I said quite a few moments ago, we are in qualifying, and qualifying is soon to wrap up here. It's looking very good for Zachary Rivard. Has about a 9/10 of a second gap between himself and Megan Overstreet there in P1 and P2 in class. And meanwhile, in the Formula V's, it's a little bit spread out as well, with a 4/10 of a second gap separating Tom Laurie at the front of that category in the 260 car, and then Jim Brewster in the 933, who's actually the driver that set the pace in the practice session earlier today. Meanwhile, there's some shuffling there. Stephen Blethen moves into P3 in the Formula Ford, so not a whole lot of time left. We're actually going to hit the 15-minute mark right there, so the qualifying has wrapped up. All these drivers are going to be finishing their last laps here. The checkered flag is out of this qualifying session. Fairly spread out field there in the Formula Ford, something we always tend to expect with those cars that are a bit more driver skill oriented, shall we say. We usually see the cream of the crop rise up and really stake their claim, which is a quote that I'm sure many of the people that are showing their support for Zachary Rivard are really going to appreciate here in the YouTube chat here of the stream here on Apex. But it's looking very good for him as the qualifying session is soon to wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting here looking at it, and obviously Zach, he's pretty much got that on lockdown with almost a 1 second gap to Megan in P2. But I'm looking at the lap times. It's a 16-second gap from the front of the Formula Fords to the rear of the Formula V's. So that's going to mean that we're probably going to be looking at lap traffic about the 7-minute mark or so.
Let me do the math real quick.
There's going to be a little bit more for that first lap because they always try and give a gap, and it just takes the V's a little bit longer to get up to speed. So I'm going to guess the 7-lap mark or something like that, maybe 6. But it'll be interesting because that's going to be the key to this, is just trying to get I think we've seen that enough now that it's just trying to get the lap traffic navigated is going to play another, I think, pivotal role in this race.
So I just did some quick calculations here, and it turns out that if they hit the lap traffic around the 6 lap mark, that'll be about the halfway mark of this race, around the 10-minute barrier. So I think that's going to play a massive role in this race. That's going to be a big wrench thrown in the works. So we'll just have to wait and see. And of course, one big variable in that could be incidents. If we see some of these drivers go off track, as Raymond Blethen is heading through the very challenging turn 10, which even in these cars, which are a little bit slower in terms of top speed, it's still like threading the eye of a needle going through that corner. So that's going to be I think that's going to be an area where we may see some overzealous attempts at an overtake going through the S's there. They're still just barreling through there at close to about 100 miles an hour. They may have to crack out of the gas just a little bit heading into turn 10, but that's going to be a pretty fun track. I think overall, fun track as far as I'm concerned. I used to have some mixed opinions about this when it used to be the IndyCar finale, but I think this is a very fun track, and fingers crossed it leads to some fun racing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those that's I kind of equate it to CTMP a little bit. Canadian Tire is it's pretty daunting when you first get out here, but once you really get the feel for the track and understand your lines and what you can do, what you can't, it is quite fun.
I think we're going to get let me check real quick. I believe we will be getting the starting grid here in just a few moments' time. And it's going to be Zachary Rivard leading the field to green in the Formula Fords. Megan Overstreet will be starting alongside him in P2. Stephen Blethen will be in P3. Andrew Wozencroft in P4. Raymond Blethen in 5th. And Wayne Buttermore running at your top 6 and your whole field in the Formula Fords.
Yeah, in the Formula V's, Tom Laurie is on pole. Jim Brewster is in P2. Seth Spolman and Andrew Love are on row 2. And then we've got Stevie Ray, league organizer, Michelle Lynn, row 3, Jacob Schilling and Josh Justice, row 4, TJ Preble and Russell Lundberg, row 5, and your top 10, and then Joaquin Effinger rounding out the Formula V field.
Got 17 cars on track here tonight, but I think it's still going to be a fantastic race here with 12 corners for the drivers to negotiate, actually a little bit more with those weirdly named 13A and 8, actually no, not 13, my apologies, 3A and 8A. So let me do the math real quick. It'd be 14 corners actually on this track with 17 drivers. And I think we have a little bit of time before we get this, before we actually pick up the start of this race. So you can see the Porsche pace car now about to start that very long formation lap for all these drivers before they get the green in a few moments time. So I think before we do that, we're going to give a shout out to one of the proud partners of the Ray Esports Racing League, and that is Sim Motion. Sim Motion is not only the official sponsor of the official Formula 1600 series here on iRacing, but is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Racing League. And now Charles and I were talking just a little bit during that commercial, and we mentioned one thing that led to that spin there for Blethen towards the end of that qualifying session, and that is the curb. So I think before we get the green here in just a few moments' time, just expand on that theory, Charles, and how badly the curbs are going to affect the Formula cars here in this race.
Yeah, well, the Formula cars are okay on some of the curbs, but once you start getting a little bit of rise in them, especially like right here when you're going through 7, the curbs kind of stand up a little bit, and the transitions on and off those curbs are not great for these cars. So as you can see, the kind of the rise on the inside curb there, it's going to be one of those that they just have to be really careful, especially on cold tires, because just get the car unsettled, and if you try and give it too much throttle or brake with the car unsettled, you'll just kind of lose it. So that'll be something we will have to watch out for during the race.
The feeling tonight's action is going to be a tale of two halves. We're going to have the Formula cars that really can't handle the curbs worth of crap, that we're going to have the MX-5s here later on tonight that are going to be eating those curbs like cereal for breakfast. So we're going to see really a tale of two halves here in tonight's action. But first up is the Formulas, and the field is going to be in the hands of Zachary Rivard. You can see that Porsche pace car making the turn to go down pit lane. The field is now in the hands of your front row starters. We're going to look, it's a little bit of a long run between when that pace car pulls off and when we're going to get the green, but when that comes out, the drivers are going to have a very short run heading into turn 1. The green flag is already out and the drivers are on their way. Has a little bit of a street circuit feel this start finish straightaway, but it's going to be Zachary Rivard getting the punch early on Megan Overstreet, going to be leading into turn 1. Megan Overstreet going to be slotting behind in P2. Meanwhile, the Formula Vs have started a little bit farther behind, had a split start here in this fight. You can see now the drivers in the Formula V category getting through nicely, some side-by-side action as they go through turn number 2 here, about to enter turn 3, which may be a section where these drivers have to be really careful, especially going through 3A, which is a blind corner here. I can already see Josh Justice spinning farther in the back, going for a wild trip through the grass there. So Josh Justice, very tough start for the driver that we've seen running up towards the front throughout this series. He has sadly had a very bad start and is dropping down like a rock through the grid, so he's going to have a lot of breaks fall his way if he's going to have any sort of shot of breaking back into the top 5 in the Formula Vs. But up towards the front of the Formula Fords, it's still Zachary Rivard running up towards the front of the field. Megan Overstreet running this race in P2, and your P3 runner currently in the class is Andrew Wozencroft. Meanwhile, back to the Formula Vs now, and you can see still these drivers battling very hard heading into turn number 7. Ooh, big lock up there farther in the back. Nearly had some rear end contact there with Michelle Lynn in that very bright purple car in the middle of the field. But you can see some shuffling all throughout this field. You can see that was actually Josh Justice well farther in the back. I could just barely get a glimpse of his very bright Formula V farther in the back of this field. So besides Josh Justice's little bit of rally action there at the start, it's been fairly clean thus far, a lot cleaner than I was expecting.
Yeah, they really did a good job. I think I couldn't really tell from the way it looked for Justice. Maybe he locked up and kind of overcorrected the car, or maybe there was some netcode contact. He was running pretty close to one of the other cars there, but it just looked kind of strange. It didn't look like a very natural kind of incident. So let's see if we can get a replay here from Josh. We're coming down through here. We'll be coming into turns 3 and 3A. Yeah, he just lost the rear and overcorrected. Yeah, he just kind of lost the rear, and and just like I said, just kind of overcorrected that, tried to catch it, and with cold tires, it's just a little more difficult, as you see it here. Yeah, it's just you see the elevation changes, a little bit of a dip there, and just the car got light on him, and which made that just almost, I guess it just made it impossible for him to catch it and move forward. So he'll have a little bit of work to do to make up that gap.
I'm surprised we haven't mentioned the elevation change at this track. It's one of the hilliest circuits in all of motor racing, especially one in California. Usually the tracks in California, you'd expect them to be a little bit flat, but this and Laguna Seca that we visited earlier on in the season are definitely spitting images of that not being the case throughout all California tracks. Meanwhile, we've got a huge amount of lockups in the Formula Vs. You can actually see there's 2 kinds of smoke that you get from these Formula Vs. You get some from these drivers just shifting through their gears, and others from locking up, which is fairly susceptible in these Formula V cars, especially on these very cold tires. These cars have no aerodynamic grip to speak of, so they're really reliant on the tire temperature and that mechanical grip, especially towards the start of this race. So if there's any sort of dust on the circuit, that'll really wreak havoc to your race. Speaking of wrecking havoc to your race, Andrew Wozencroft has had some kind of off. Not sure if he had some kind of technical issue. We may have to take a look at a replay to see what in the world happened to the driver who was running 3rd at one point. You've got some side-by-side action here in the Formula Vs, but I think we'll cut to a replay of what in the world happened to Andrew Wozencroft here.
Yeah, let's take a look here. So he definitely did tow, so we'll just kind of watch. Caught that curve and just lost it. Yep, just kind of lost the rear end. He back into the wall. He absolutely backed into the tire barrier. And so just a nice quick tow, I believe, to get the car out of the line of traffic. And he will either reset, or he'll just say, you know what, I'm gonna go get in the MX-5 and get some laps in.
Yeah, I can't really blame him. That's a very easy corner. I mean, we outlined it. It is like threading the eye of a needle with the needle attached to a Saturn V rocket traveling at escape velocity. So that's a very tricky corner to get right in these cars. So reliant on the mechanical grip and so easy to make a mistake, especially with that high, extremely high curb, which feels more like a mountain than anything else. So sadly, just another driver getting caught out by that, but I don't think it will be the last. We still have a lot left to play for in this race. 4 minutes and 45 in to this 20-minute affair here. We're seeing some action here at the front of the Formula V fight. This Tom Laurie trying to get a move done here on Jim Brewster down the inside of turn 7. Meanwhile, we've got Andrew Love trying to sneak a wheel down the inside as well. I think he'll be able to get it done on both Brewster and Laurie there, as Laurie ran very wide there, had a lockup going through turn 7 and has dropped back like a rock, lost down some positions, and Jim Brewster managed to regain the lead just for now. I think Andrew Love was trying to get a move done there going through the S's. That would have been a very bold move in the section between turns 7 and 8, but he just wasn't close enough. We'll see if anyone tries to go for a move here. Heading into the hairpin, which I think is my preferred overtaking opportunity. You're still carrying a boatload of speed. You have that drift, which is keeping these cars so close together. And we're seeing some 3-wide action here heading into the hairpin. Ooh, you can see they're very close stuff. Ooh, that was a fantastic move from Schilling to slip his way in there. Brewster managed to prevail there, was the last of the late breakers, and actually held off on his position there fairly smoothly. Meanwhile, Tom Laurie actually dropped down to P4. So Laurie, after just barely, I think it was probably about a split second that he was in the lead of this race, he's dropped back even more. So I think Laurie might be a man on a mission to try and regain a little bit of honor here between now and the finish, as we see some harder action here continuing between Brewster and Love. There may be some, actually no, Brewster clears him heading into 3, but I'm sure this action is going to flare up once again once they get onto that back straightaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could see as we were talking before the race started, the kind of multiple lines through that corner, through the hairpin, with some cars going wide. And they even tried it at 7. Laurie obviously lost a couple of spots, but got a really good run out of 7. Excuse me. And was able to carry the speed and hold off the rest of the cars behind just from the extra speed he was able to carry out of 7. But it didn't do him a lot of good, as you saw Schilling with that move to the inside of 11. And was a really good pass. So it'll be reset, and I think everybody's learned it a little bit as we're going, as we see this, very close to wheel-to-wheel contact there. So you'll see these multiple lines keep emerging, and see if people can take these different lines and make a run at the end of this race.
As this action has developed here in the Formula Vs, I'm keeping my eye on the lap counter. We said that around lap 6 was when we were going to see lap traffic get involved, and I think that may be coming up here in just a few moments' time. You can see Zachary Rivard still at the front of the Formula 4 fight. Formula Ford fight, my apologies. I cover another series here on Apex, the Apex Racing Academy Formula 4 Championship, so I can blame my dyslexia for getting the two series confused, but he's still got some awesome Formula action here all throughout this field. The drivers once again nearly going 3 wide heading into the hairpin. That, I think, is the only section of the circuit where you can really attempt going 3 wide. That and on the back straightaway with the shutdown area of the drag strip heading into 7. That's the only real section where you can go 3 wide. Even in these tiny Formula Vs, it's very bold to try and go side by side anywhere else, but all these drivers are still attempting, and I gotta wonder if these drivers simply do not fear death, because they're going side by side basically everywhere. And there's been a lot of shuffling all throughout this field. Jacob Schilling has now moved up into P2 there, so he's going to have a heads-up fight between himself and Jim Brewster here between now and the checkered flag. But I gotta wonder, once a lap traffic catches up to these drivers, which is not going to be very long, I'm trying to look in the background to see where Zachary Rivard is on the circuit, but he is not a very long ways back. So I think, I gotta imagine, probably not this lap, but next lap will probably be when we start to see the lap traffic take effect. You can see Zachary Rivard just about entering turn 3 now. So it's not a whole lot of, I mean, they still have a pretty big gap between himself and when he catches up to the Formula V leaders, but it's still not a very comfortable gap. If you're the Formula Vs, they will certainly catch up to them between now and the checkered flag. Andrew Love, ooh, very close there. I think they're going 3 wide, exiting turn 7, going through the S's here. Jim Brewster had a pretty big lockup there and nearly lost the lead to Jacob Schilling and Andrew Love. They're going 3, nearly 4 wide, heading through turn 7, just fanning out there, abusing the track limits at that corner, but all these drivers having to go through there with very interesting lines. That's one thing that we haven't mentioned about that corner, just a very different lines that all those drivers can take, whether it be a late apex, an early apex, just a normal apex, whatever it may be. There's a lot of different lines you can choose with these cars, and you can see now some hard action continuing here. Jacob Schilling trying to get the move done here on Jim Brewster. They actually managed to clear him heading through the corners, and Jim Brewster putting on defensive masterclass here to hold off on that P1 position for now.
Yeah, Jim's doing a great job running up front. He's just picking the right line, and it's working out for him. He is running a good defensive line. So yeah, as this race moves a little further, those cars that are in the back of the Formula V field will start checking their mirrors frequently for those Formula 4s. They know they're coming, so they'll be really trying to be aware of those cars. And Jim just continuing just a late break. He's doing a really good job of just braking really late and keeping the car in the racing line and not really giving anybody a chance to pass. So he's doing a fantastic job up front.
a beautiful job of defending that he is putting on right now, but I gotta wonder if in doing this he is starting to push those tires just a little bit too much. I'll take a look at my live timing screen, but I gotta imagine that Jim Brewster and Jacob Schilling are fairly evenly matched pace-wise, so I'm sure Jim Brewster is really pushing that Formula V of his. Thank you very much, Josh, for this quick look here at the laps here. It was actually, Jacob Schilling there, much quicker last time by than Jim Brewster, actually just lost out on position to Tom Laurie there. So Jacob Schilling now moving back there into P number 3. So Brewster not really the fastest in the world right now. I gotta imagine if he's feeling a lot of pressure from the drivers right behind, but I think he is very happy about the fact that Laurie and Schilling had a little bit of a battle there, gave him a slight bit of a buffer going through turn 7. So I think, I mean, it's hard to say because still there's a lot that can happen between now and the checkered flag. We still have 9 minutes left to go, and these drivers are nearly going 3 wide towards the front of the Formula Vs. There's still plenty that can happen between now and the checkered flag, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Jim Brewster holding off that P1 position.
Well, the 80 got a really good run on the inside. So is that, that was Wozencroft. Okay, so that's when the Formula Fords lap down, so he just did a good job of just kind of working his way through. Jim's, he's I've seen him, the Weekend Warriors. He's not the fastest guy out there, but he's really consistent, and obviously he looks like he's got the car under him, and he's pretty aware of what he can do and what he can't do, and he's doing enough. So the guys behind are still fighting, and it's still a nice 4-car battle up front. So this is really interesting, and I think this is probably going to carry till the end of the race. So it's going to be who can make the last move and make it stick to get to that run to the line.
Well, here we go. We've got the lap traffic involved now. Zachary Rivard catching up a little bit later than we were expecting. We were thinking around lap 6 or 7, but he actually catches them on lap 8. Just took a little bit easy. I mean, I say taking it easy. He still leads by about 4.5 seconds over Megan Overstreet overall in that Formula Ford fight, but he catches them up a little bit later than I was expecting. He just needs to dispatch of these Formula Vs, which are basically like small insects in the racing world. Ooh, very close to making contact there with Andrew Love coming out of turn 7. Ooh, very close again to Jacob Schilling. Zach Rivard really needs to take it easy right now. He doesn't have to push the envelope too much, nearly making contact again. Just shows you the lack of aerodynamic grip that all these Formula cars have, just sliding it around and really running on the ragged edge of grip. Zachary Rivard dispatching with all of those Formula V cars. So that'll be the last we see of the lap traffic game here, and thankfully for your overall leader, he managed to go through them fairly smoothly. Actually lost just a little bit of time, but we'll see Megan Overstreet, who's now in the midst of that Formula V fight, as I think we had a little bit of contact farther in the back, if I'm not mistaken. I think I saw Seth Spolman lock up and make contact with the driver farther behind. So I think we've had some drama here outside of the top 5 in the Formula Vs. We've had some action all throughout this race thus far. We are 13.5 minutes into this race, so about 6.5 minutes left to go here, but still a lot to be decided.
Yeah, for sure. I think Josh is getting us a replay, and so we'll get a look here. So TJ Preble, got Stevie Ray in the mix there. Just lock up, early braking out for that car, and then just turned in. Didn't really see the car coming in, and so just a little bit of miscommunication by those two cars. Some contact, spin, and then they're back on their way. I will say this, Megan did pick up about 3/4 of a second just because she caught the traffic in a better place than Zachary did. So, obviously she's still got quite a ways to make up, and she's going to have to do it based on her pace at this point because they're through the field, so they're not going to catch them again. And so she's going to have to find something in her racing line to see if she can make that time up.
Well, I think we have a challenge for the lead here in the Formula V's. Unsuccessful yet again. Tom Laurie just didn't have the exit coming out of turn 7. It looked like he got the move done from our camera angle as they exited turn 7, but he just didn't have the exit there. Jim Brewster running around the outside. Maybe that's a little bit of an intentional decision from him. Just rounding off the corner as much as he possibly can, covering a lot more distance, but carrying a lot more speed going through there. So sadly for him, he is also the driver punching the hole in the air for all those drivers drivers. So we see Tom Laurie trying to go for a move around the outside here. I think he gets hung out to dry yet again as we see Jacob Schilling and Laurie now going side by side, exiting turn 11, heading through the kink of turn number 12. Tom Laurie now trying to go for a move. This is going to be on the outside of turn 1, then to the inside of 2. We'll see if Laurie can finally have a different leader in the Formula Vs. We'll see. It's going to be a battle of the last late breakers from Jim Brewster's experience. It looks like he's going to have the upper hand, but he actually didn't clear him as much as he would have had in mind. We're following Andrew Love right now, running in P4, trying to challenge Jacob Schilling, who's now challenging Tom Laurie, who couldn't get the move done there on your leader of Brewster. Ooh, very close to contact, probably about 8 inches separating those two Formula Vs as they went through 3A. But all these drivers still battling hard, but they've actually allowed Brewster to actually extend a little bit of a gap. You can see a pretty big gap between himself and Laurie and Schilling right now in P2 and P3. Andrew Love looking to try and size up a move on the two of them. Maybe they may try and make it 3 wide heading into 7. But with all this battling still very close, I think there was a little bit of netcode contact between the two of them coming onto the back straightaway. Andrew Love now trying to go for a move down the inside, but with all this hard battling between these drivers fighting for the last 2 podium spots in the Formula Vs, it's allowed Brewster to extend a pretty big gap there. I think Schilling had a little bit of a half spin there. He's dropped back like a rock and is losing a position. Actually, no, that is, I believe, Wayne Butter. Actually, no, I believe that's Stephen Blethen, if I'm not mistaken, negotiating. So we have the Formula Fords now catching up. The rest of the Formula Fords, it's a pretty big gap in the Formula Fords between first and second and the rest of the field. So really, we're just seeing wave 2, you could say, of that lap traffic being involved. But that was a pretty big screw up there from Jacob Schilling. Lost a lot of time. He's now about 4 seconds back of Jim Brewster in the lead. We're getting a quick replay here heading into 7. I gotta wonder, was there some sort of contact, or did he just overcook it here, trying to outbrake his competitors heading into turn 7? Ooh, yep, there's a little bit of contact, I think, there. That was Tom Laurie. Quick little quarter spin, shall we call it, but he still lost quite a lot of time there.
Yeah, he did, and it's just hard racing, and you know, when you're on the outside, sometimes you get the short end of the stick, and that's what happened. That was a good move by Laurie to take that inside line down into the hairpin and just read it perfectly in 7. Was able to just kind of open up the mid part of the corner, hit both apexes, and then jump up to P2.
All these drivers putting on some fairly textbook drives right now, and just touching on some other stories that we've had throughout this field. Preble, currently running in P10, was involved in that small little schmozzle at the hairpin a few laps ago in the Formula Vs, and Josh Justice, as we saw from a little message in the YouTube chat, he actually had a not power steering issue, a force feedback issue in his wheel, whereby he wouldn't get any force feedback if he was turning to the right, if I remember the chat correctly. So that's not very, I mean, you have no confidence in a race car if you just have no feeling whatsoever turning in one direction. So unfortunate for him. So fingers crossed we see Josh Justice running in the MX5 race later on this evening. But right now we're following Zachary Rivard, extending that gap even more between himself and Megan Overstreet. It is 5.7 seconds separating the two of them, teetering now 5.8 seconds separating the two of them. So that small little gap that Megan Overstreet managed to claw back on her adversary there as they went through lap traffic really is just formulated to naught, shall we say. You can see the lap times that all those drivers have set. Zachary Rivard running up towards the front actually set the fastest lap of the race last time by at a 1:38.5. Meanwhile, Megan Overstreet at a 1:39.7. So I think Megan Overstreet really just I mean, I can't really say that she's driving bad because she's still much quicker than everyone else in the Formula Ford field. It's just that Zachary Rivard, I mean, the man drives Formula 1600s in real life. Used iRacing as really a springboard for him to launch his own racing career. So Zachary Rivard, you can't really judge Megan Overstreet too much. It's just that Rivard running up towards the front is basically untouchable.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Yeah, Zach's just the class of the field tonight. He's got the car dialed in. Megan obviously doing a good job. She's 5.8 back, but she's 31 seconds ahead of P3. So that just shows you what a great job she is doing. It's just that Zach's just that much better. So, you know, it happens sometimes, and you just get a good a driver who's driving well, and there's just really not anything you've got for him, and you just had to kind of tip your cap and said, I'll get you next time.
I mean, at this point, it's really just consolidating her losses, shall we say. I mean, I say consolidating her losses. She's still putting in a fantastic drive, as we're seeing some action here between Jacob Schilling and Michelle Lynn, battling for the final 2 positions in the top 5 of the Formula Vs. But I think Megan Overstreet, I mean, fingers crossed we see some action there at the front of the MX-5s. That series never disappoints in the action department, so I think that's going to be pretty awesome later on tonight. But we still have to put the cap on this Formula race here, and the checkered flag has come out. The 20 minutes has expired, so I think some of these drivers are going to be taking the checkered flag this time by. I believe Zach Rivard is on the last lap, just was barely... I think he crossed the line with about 15 seconds left on the clock, so not a whole lot of time left for him. So he took that one flag and 1 lap to go, took that white flag. All these drivers are going to be taking the checkered, if I'm not mistaken, here in the Formula V. So this is going to be a heads-up fight here farther in the back. But meanwhile, Jim Brewster, after that small little schmozzle for the drivers farther behind, he managed to extend a pretty big gap, and I believe he'll be coasting to the finish here. He's going to be taking the checkered flag, and Jim Brewster taking the checkered flag here in the Formula Vs. Fairly textbook stuff from him, put on a defensive masterclass to take the win in the Formula Vs. Meanwhile, if we can switch our attention to the drivers running up towards the front of the Formula Vs, Michelle Lynn caps off the top 5 in the FVs. Meanwhile, in the Formula 4s, I believe Zach Rivard is going to be taking the checkered flag in just a few moments' time, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be him putting another feather in his cap, shall we say, and just completing another dominant drive that we've seen from him all this season. If we had the, I think if we had a Driver of the Year award here just in one class, I think Zach Rivard would be able to do it, because he's going to take another win here in the Formula Fords. A not very dramatic way, shall we say. He just sort of just pulled off into the distance. Zach Rivard takes a win in the Formula Fords. Megan Overstreet coming home in P2. That's going to be a pretty big gap between herself and Raymond Blethen there in P3. But I think we have a little bit of a battle here at the tail end of the podium here.
I think this is a father-son battle here, as a matter of fact, the Blethens.
Ooh, maybe a little bit. Actually, it wouldn't be team orders. Would it be family orders?
Maybe.
I guess it would be.
Maybe.
I think Blue. I thought they were nearly going to make contact. He's running. Yeah, did he run out of gas? I think he did. He spun him out a little bit there. So a little bit of a bump and run in the Formula Fords. You don't really see that too much. So it's going to be another Blethen, Stephen Blethen, taking the win there. Not taking the win. My apologies. Taking the final podium position in the Formula Ford fight. If that was the battle for the win, that would have been an excellent way to cap off that race. Raymond Blethen finishing that race in P number 4. Actually, the drivers in the Formula Vs haven't taken the checkered flag. So this time by, it's going to be Jim Brewster taking the win. Actually, it's a photo finish between himself and Tom Laurie. I think Laurie might be able to pull it. Oh, just barely 0.04 of a second separating the two of them at the finish. That was some hard stuff there. I nearly stabbed myself in the back there just saying that Jim Brewster was going to take the win, and they were separated by less than a half of a tenth at the checkered flag there. So Jim Brewster, regardless, taking the win there in the Formula Vs. Michelle Lynn actually moved up into P3, so I think we saw some drivers. Yeah, you can see Andrew Love and all the other drivers actually fell out of the race fairly late on, so I think fuel was a massive issue towards the end of that race. That gave Michelle Lynn a podium.
Yeah, I've got to imagine that they maybe just short fueled and thought that they were going to go one lap less than they actually did, and then ran out on the final lap. That's a weird way to end that. So I think we're going to get Michelle Lynn with a podium. So congratulations there. But yeah, good battle by Jim Brewster and Tom Laurie. 0.04 of a second gap. And if it wouldn't have been for the Road America Weekend Warriors last week, that would be very, very close. But we had some very tight finishes at Road America last weekend. It was amazing. So, but great racing by those two. Jim just did a great job. Stayed up front, basically from start to finish. Did a great job of defending his position. And so hats off to him.
I think we'll get a quick word from him here after that race. We're going to bring in Jim Brewster to have a quick little chat with him. After that fairly dramatic Formula V race there from start to finish. Jim Brewster, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary booth. How was it out there?
How was it? It was a Formula V race. As you know, I'm running the Weekend Warrior Vs now, and this is the bee's knees for racing, man.
The bee's knees, indeed. I saw you putting on a bee's knees of a defensive masterclass there, trying to hold off on that P1 spot. I was a little bit skeptical that he can hold it off there, so just how was it trying to fend off the challenges from the cars farther behind?
Well, we practiced for an hour and a half, and my best buddy, Andrew's the one who I just spun out, so I owe Andrew a big apology, and he says he's not mad at me. We've been racing together for 25 years, and so we did a lot of practicing of that defense down to that straightaway and into that hairpin.
I'll tell you what, that was pretty nice to see you defend as hard as you could. You're defending like a lion there from start to finish. So I'll kind of touch on that real quick. There were really two overtaking opportunities that we saw used a lot here in the Formula Vs and the Formula Fords for that matter as well. Turn 7 and Turn 11. So what was your favorite of the overtaking opportunities? Even though you didn't really have to use them as much, you're really the one being used with those overtaking opportunities.
Well, the Turn 11 really... the reason I was going to the inside was to take away the draft more than protect the line. But then once I was there, I just stayed there. And I was actually running sort of the middle lane and let them have the outside. Because really it was about coming through 10. I wanted to get out of their draft because between 10 and 11, they're going to pick up a lot on you. So that was really the trick.
Jim Brewster, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary booth. Anyone would like to give thanks to or shout out?
My sister Tam down in Argentina, she watches every week. She loves you guys, and you guys, we love the shows you guys put together. We all, when we're done here, we run out and then watch the videos and then send them to our grandmothers and dads and moms all around the world.
You always got to share the clips with the family. So Jim Brewster, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the kind words about this broadcast.
Hey.
And fingers crossed that we see you in the MX5 race later on tonight.
I won't be there tonight. It's too late. I get up early morning. But hey, come race Vs with us. Bring out your V on a Saturday and come join us.
Amen. That would be have a nice big Formula V field like we saw in Mid-Ohio, and fingers crossed that we see it in the runoffs here in a few weeks' time. Jim Brewster, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
That was Jim Brewster, your winner in the Formula Vs. And Charles, I think I'll pass it off to you to have a chat with your overall and the Formula Ford winner here tonight, Zachary Rivard.
Yeah, Zachary Rivard with another win in the Formula Fords. Zach, I mean, it was pretty much a textbook race for you. Get the pole, jump out to a nice lead. Megan did what she could do to try and keep up, but just looking at it, and you were out front by 4 or 5 seconds. Pretty much the majority of the race were clipping off 3-4 tenths every lap, and the two of you combined, you were over 30 seconds ahead of P3. So that's a fantastic drive.
Yeah, that one was a little more straightforward than Mid-Ohio, thankfully. It was just all about those first couple laps, and I had a good first lap on cold tires to kind of break the draft, and then from there I was pretty confident that I had the pace once I broke the draft, but yeah, after that I was just worried about traffic. I think my lap in traffic was like 3.5 seconds slower than my regular lap, so I was a bit worried there, but I think Megan also got caught up in it a little bit.
Yeah, she didn't get as bad as you did. She actually managed to pick up about 3/4 of a second during that lap as you guys were working through the traffic. But then, obviously once you got out, once you got clear, you just kind of checked out again.
Yeah, it's I don't know. This track is, I like racing at these types of tracks where, the draft isn't too big. It makes the first couple laps really important, but I think, the cold tires, that's sort of a strength of mine. So the more important, the better for me.
There you go. Did you spend a lot of time getting laps on this track, just trying to learn it?
Not a whole lot. I hopped in the practice session before qualifying, but I've seen a lot of real world footage here, and
right.
Some on board, so I had a pretty good idea of where the track went, and I'm pretty familiar with the car, so
well, yeah, obviously.
So made it a little bit easier.
All right, well, congratulations again, and I'm sure you got people you want to thank out there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely the YouTube chat, my boys Jake, Ben, Sam, and Alex, and and my dad, JD, and Chris, who are also watching, and Stevie Ray and you guys for putting this on. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations, Zach. We'll see you in the MX5 race.
All right. Yep.
Yep.
As I accidentally drag myself out of the commentary booth, I think that'll just about wrap it up here from this Formula race here at Sonoma. Very procedural stuff there in the Formula 4s, but pretty dramatic there in the Formula Vs. I think we're expecting a much different race here from the MX5s in a few moments time, but just Charles, to pass it off to you real quick for some final thoughts, closing thoughts on that Formula race.
Yeah, as you said, it was a pretty textbook victory for Zach. But yeah, that Formula 4 race was really good, and I hope Jim doesn't share that clip. I'm sure Andrew will. I'm sure Andrew will share that clip of being punted out of turn 10 down into 11. But yeah, otherwise, fantastic race. I mean, those 4 cars up front, and really put on a show, and it was great to see.
Yeah, it was a pretty awesome fight there in the Formula Vs. Always come to expect that great racing there from the Formula V category and the Formula Fords as well. That's always a great showcase of driver skill. But next up is the MX5s, where I think we're in for a damn good race there. So everyone stay tuned here on Apex Racing TV. We'll be right back after these quick messages.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back. We hope you enjoyed those messages. Yeah, the proud partners here of Apex Racing TV. We're back here from the Ray Esports Racing League here with the MX-5s. I'm Ron Mullins, joined by Charles Bichelle with our old fuddy, as I said at the open of this broadcast, Josh Wilkie, working all the cameras and the graphics that you'll be seeing through the second half of this broadcast. We're here with the MX-5s, as I said, and I think we are in for a pretty good race here. We saw really a tale of two halves there with the Formula Fords and the Formula Vs, where the Formula Fords, it was really, I wouldn't say a parade, because that's really downselling the action that we saw in that category, especially towards the finish with the father-son pushing there with a lot of drivers running out of fuel. Meanwhile, in the Formula Vs, it was just balls to the wall racing from start to finish. So it's a tale of two halves, and as I said even before that race, I'm expecting a tale of two halves just as a race as a whole just this evening here with these MX-5s. I said at the start, we're going to see a lot of these drivers banging into the curbs, eating them for breakfast, is I think the terminology that I used at the start of this broadcast. So Charles, do you think that's going to be the case, or do you think these drivers are going to lay off the curbs just a little bit here?
No, I think the curbs will be used frequently. Obviously, I think there's probably some that the Mazdas will take better than others. Obviously, you have to be very careful, anytime that you see them riding that inside curb there. So, yeah, you know what? Actually, no, I think they're going to just take all the curbs. And I think that they'll use them to their advantage. And you see it just, yeah, it's going to be that type of race, thanks to Lewis Lockshine there for demonstrating exactly what they're going to do during this race. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think, the MX-5s always put on a really good battle. Some really close racing, and so looking forward to a nice big pack up front battling for that win.
And the checkered flag has come out here in this qualifying session at Jameson Huffman at the front right now. 1:45.710 is his qualifying time right now. A pretty big gap between himself and Lewis Lockshine there in P2. We'll see if any of these drivers can close that gap or move up any sort of places here in the dying stages of this qualifying session. I believe a vast majority of the drivers have actually taken the checkered flag here in this qualifying session. I think there may be a few still left out on track. Andrew Wozencroft certainly took the checkered flag last time by, just getting himself a little bit of added seat time here at this combination. He didn't have the best of races there in the Formula Fords earlier on this evening. So instead of, I do give him credit, he did take the checkered flag in that race. He didn't just give up and move on to practice here in these MX-5s. So I give him credit for that. But he is, I wouldn't say feeling the burn, but he is definitely going to try and look to have a much better evening here with these MX-5s than he saw in the Formula Fords earlier on this evening. We have some action farther in the back. Raymond Blethen moving up to P10, so all these drivers just shuffling around a little bit.
Yeah, well, Rosencroft did move up on that final lap. He actually jumped up to P3, so he jumped in between Lockshine and Overstreet, so he'll be starting on row 2. Unless we get a faster lap here in the very closing stages of qualifying here, everybody's getting that last lap in. So see, Sherman looks like he's on it. So maybe he can move up a few spots before it's all said and done.
Just looking at Mark Sherman right now, drifting that MX-5 going through turn 10. I'll take a look at my iRacing results here and see what kind of lap times he set in practice. He wasn't too quick there. He set a 1:49.4 as his best practice lap, so we'll see if he can improve this time here in qualifying. We'll see. I think, did he improve there? I don't believe he did. So Mark Sherman starting this race in P12, 13 cars setting a qualifying time thus far, so a little bit of a smaller field than we usually come to expect here from the Ray Esports Racing League. But I think even though it is a little bit of a tiny field compared to what we usually expect, I think we're still in for a pretty good race here. I gotta imagine. I think we may see a little bit more carnage, or just I guess the correct term would be attrition that we'll see in this race. So do you think that will be the case here, Charles?
I mean, maybe. I mean, these cars will bang a little bit more than what we would see in the Formula races, obviously, because they have fenders, and so they don't have just the exposed suspension pieces. So they don't have a problem kind of rubbing up against each other. And we do have 3 other cars that didn't set a qualifying time. So we'll see if they make the field, but Josh Soto, Joshua Justice, and Joaquin Effinger are all at least jumped into the sim. Now we'll see if they come out onto the track for the qualifying or not.
We'll just have to wait
the race.
We'll just have to wait and see if they join the track for the race. I think that'd be a shame because all those drivers are fairly good. We'll see if they take the grid here in just a few moments' time. Speaking of, we're going to get the starting grid here for you in just a few moments' time. We'll take a look through the starting grid, and it's going to be Jamison Huffman grabbing the pole in the MX-5's Lewis Lockshine, joining him there on the front row, about 0.2 of a second, separating the two of them. That's going to be Andrew Rosencroft there in P3, looking for redemption after that disappointing result that he had in the Formula Fords. That's going to be Megan Overstreet starting this race in P4. John Wilson will be in 5th. Tony Roma will be in P number 6. Tom Laurie will be in 7th. Stephen Blethen will be there in P number 8. Seth Spolman will be in 9th, and Raymond Blethen will round out your top 10.
Yeah, so in 11th, we've got Rich Green, Mark Sherman on the outside, and P12, Wayne Buttermore, Josh Soto on row 7, and rounding out field, Josh Justice and Joaquin Effinger will be your starting 16. And looks like at least, it looks like Soto was on the track and Justice was on the track, but Justice is back in the pit, so he may still be dealing with hardware issues.
Yeah, that's a shame, but just a small little part of sim racing where a small little technical issue can take you out of tonight's action. But we do have a pretty good race on our hands here. 20 minutes here in the MX-5s, and one of the proud partners here of the MX-5 category, the official sponsor of the MX-5s here, is Grassroots Motorsports. Built for true sports car enthusiasts, Grassroots Motorsports has one mission: to be your personal guide to the sports car world. Whether it be online at grassrootsmotorsports.com, in print, or at the track, the racers, mechanics, and car nerds at Grassroots Motorsports will take you behind the scenes of the racing world and teach you how to improve your car. Grassroots Motorsports has a taste of everything that you may want out of this hobby that we all know and love. Whether you want to hear stories about 1,000 horsepower track monsters or cool street cruisers built in people's driveways, they've got you covered. Grassroots also has a collection of staff-maintained project cars and a catalog of articles breaking down the ins and outs of cars written inside of a garage with greasy hands rather than typed from behind a clean desk and a prim and proper office. If you'd like to read, learn, or just be a part of the story, head on over to grassrootsmotorsports.com. Grassroots Motorsports is a proud partner of the Ray Esports Racing League. So we see these drivers about to enter the turn 8 section here. They're going through it right now. This, I think, will be a real trouble spot for all these drivers. I'm sure they're going to try and force the issue a little bit and go side by side here on lap 1. Do you think this is going to be a real trouble spot? Do you think these drivers are going to be a bit more aggressive here, Charles?
I think the I guess that SS section there between turn 7 and turn 10 is probably going to be the trouble spot of the race. So we'll just have to see how well they navigate it, because they'll obviously if they get a run, they'll try and go side by side there, and just try and pick up a spot if they can. So we'll see what happens. See if they get the cars, just get the tires warmed up and get the first lap in.
Also didn't have enough time to do it before the start of this race. We'd like to thank the Inside the SCCA podcast. We'll touch on that later on throughout tonight's broadcast. So the drivers are going to be taking the green flag in just a few moments' time. It's going to be a very short run until they'll have to turn that steering wheel once again, go through turn 1 and try not to have any sort of error here, coming through with no runoff to speak of whatsoever. But it's going to be a nice side-by-side hustle here, going through turn 1, about to enter turn 2, going hard on the brakes here, trying to scrub off as much speed as you possibly can in those MX-5s, but it's a pretty good start there from your pole sitter, Jamison Huffman. He has taken that punch over Lewis Lockshine there in P2. Megan Overstreet got the advantage on Andrew Wilsoncroft to move into P3, the last podium position for now. Meanwhile, farther in the back, we've got some tussling outside of the top 5, some drivers shuffling for position. I think I saw some drivers also take the start from the pits. I'm not sure if my eyes were just deceiving me, but I saw some drivers doing some burnouts at their pit box. So some drivers doing a very interesting strategy. We saw that in the Radical Esports Cup broadcast here on Apex Racing TV earlier on. Actually, it was last Friday, where we saw one of the store drivers from that series try and do a last to first challenge. Josh Justice there with that force feedback issue. I think he said in the YouTube chat during the Formula race that he was just going to do one lap and then park it just to try and claim some points from this race. It's very tough that he has some sort of technical issue, but again, the world of technology and the world of sim racing will bite you at the worst opportune time. But meanwhile, up towards the front, Jamison Huffman is extending that gap just a little bit between himself and Lewis Lockshine. The front 4 breaking away just a little bit from Wilson there in P5. But right now, it's a pretty good start from all the drivers all throughout the field. Fairly clean as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A very clean start. Everybody got away well. Didn't see any spins or slides or anything like that. So great job. And yeah, Justice and Soto did come out of the pits on the start. And Justice is trying to get up to speed. He's a little bit behind the rest of the field. But he'll start working his way up, as I think he's already caught the back, so he'll start making that way. We've shown speed during this season, so he should be able to pick up a few spots before the race is over with.
Or I see some drivers, some people in the YouTube chat predicting the chaos when it's going to happen here in this race. Just quick FYI, Apex Racing TV does not condone the act of sports gambling, even though it's very popular in the UK, as we touched on throughout the broadcast last time out at Mid-Ohio. But it's pretty good right now for Jamison Huffman. He's extending about a half-a-second gap between himself and Lewis Lockshine. Meanwhile, the gap between Lockshine and Megan Overstreet is about 1.2 seconds. So I think that fight for the final podium spot is going to be really close between herself and Andrew Wilsoncroft there in P2. I gotta wonder if Wilson in P5 is going to get involved in that fight. We'll have to see if Megan Overstreet creates a little bit of a train behind her between now and the checkered flag. We'll just have to wait and see. But so far, it's a fairly good start. We still have 14 drivers on track. Josh Justice came into the pits, and Joaquin Effinger did not take the start. So we have 14 drivers on the circuit right now. Soto is already a lap down, so you can see now he's getting involved in some of the action here farther in the back of the field. Just a lap car hopefully gets out of the way, or maybe you'll just fight him heads up, just try and have a good show here and just have a good time here in the Ray Esports Racing League. So Josh Soto not having the best start that he would have had in mind. So right now we have 13 cars on the lead lap, separated by about 21 seconds currently, so it's still pretty close stuff. Actually, I say 21. Sherman currently running in P13.
There's our first
as we see a spin. That's our first incident of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and it was Raymond Blethen that got tipped into a spin by Josh Soto, and it was a very much preventable accident, if I'm being brutally honest. Josh Soto already a lap down. It might have been the smart call just to kind of back out of it and not really go side by side going through turn 10, which is a really tricky corner, just going single file. So that's such a shame there for those drivers to have a very bad start to the race. Actually, that's a little bit of a glitch on our end. It says now that Josh Soto is on the lead lap, so I apologize for that. So Josh, actually, it's my opinions on that accident now changed just a little bit, because I thought that Josh Soto had actually dropped down a lap. So now that I know for sure that he was on the lead lap and battling for position, I have to say that was much more of a racing accident, even though it is a little bit bold to go side by side going through turn 10 so very early on. You already see Raymond Blethen down in P13, his race arguably ruined.
All right, so here we see Soto. Looks like it's
I think this was Josh Soto having a quick little off track here. Oh, yep, there we go. So, there's a driver further I think that was Stephen Blethen.
Yeah, Blethen.
That,
Yep.
Yeah, you can see the tire marks there exiting 3A. So Blethen going for a spin. So the two Blethens getting involved in incidents very early on in this race. Not a good start for the two of them.
No, it wasn't, and we're going to see here, and we talked about this right as the race start, was this little section of S's right here. And yeah, just a little, I'm going to say that was obviously just racing contact. Maybe looked like maybe Raymond moved over just a little bit to the right. And maybe Josh caught a little of that inside curb and kind of kicked him back to the middle of the track. So, it's just tight racing there, and avoidable, yes, but not really unexpected based on what we've seen. So it's, everybody seems like they're still moving. Obviously, Blethen came out the worst there, but he's still, at the back of the field, and he's still in contact with a few cars, so he can make up a few positions before this race is all said and done.
So meanwhile, while all of that was going on with the Blethens spinning off the track and wildly out of control, thankfully avoiding the barriers that both of them did, but you can see now the gap between Megan Overstreet and Lewis Lockshine has cratered. It was about 1.2 seconds not very long ago towards the start of lap 2. Now we're at the start of lap 4 now, and you can see that gap is just barely any air separating the two of them, about a half a second as they spread out a little bit. I think Megan Overstreet didn't have the best of exits going through the carousel section here. But I gotta imagine that Lewis Lockshine feeling a little bit of burn. Maybe there's some kind of mistake from Lockshine, which led to that gap decreasing. With Lockshine run a little bit wide, heading through turn 6, going onto that back straightaway. I gotta wonder if there's some sort of mistake for the driver that has been running in P2 pretty much from start to finish. I think we'll take a look. This might have been an off-track occurrence that Lewis Lockshine had. I don't have a good feeling about this. This is heading into turn 10. And we'll see maybe a small little curb whack here. Oh, yeah, I saw that car pick up into two wheels. Went for a little bit of an off-track excursion there. I wonder, maybe he picked up some kind of slowdown there? Actually, no, I don't think he picked up some kind of slowdown from that. I think he just had a very bad turn of pace while Megan Overstreet caught a big gust of wind. But you can see now Wozencroft has picked up a big gust of wind as he's now trying to go for a move on Megan Overstreet, heading into the hairpin. Wozencroft very deep on the brakes there. I thought he overbraked himself from a mile away, but I think he actually did there a little bit as Megan Overstreet got the switchback done on him to move back into that final podium position. But you gotta give Wozencroft some credit for at least giving it the old college try heading into turn 11.
Yeah, he definitely gave it a good shot. Broke way deep into that corner, just carried too much speed, got off the apex, and was allowed Megan to do the little crossover move, take the inside line, get the good run out of the corner, and hold the position, at least temporarily. I'm sure that won't be the last time that some kind of move like that gets done.
That was a very bold move there. I was thinking that Andrew Wozencroft, because I just saw him braking in comparison to Megan Overstreet and really Lewis Lockshine right in front of him at the time. And I was just seeing him just buzz by the two of them. I was like, oh no, I'm going to see an MX-5 go barreling into the tire barriers on the outside of the corner. But I give him credit for at least trying that move, heading into the hairpin last time by. Meanwhile, I think we may see Megan Overstreet try and challenge for P2 here. They're going side by side, heading into turn 7. We're going to see who breaks later here of the two of them. Megan Overstreet usually a little bit earlier on the brakes compared to her competitors, and that actually allowed her to slot back into P3 and Lewis Lockshine to hold on onto that P2 position for now. I still think we may see this battle come to blows. I think this is going to flare up a lot between now and the finish of this race. We're already 8.5 minutes into this 20-minute affair here, so the time has flown by fairly quickly here from the MX-5s. And I think the reason why that is the case is we're just seeing this fun battle happen. They say time flies when you're having fun, and that's certainly the case for all these drivers. Megan Overstreet trying to go for a move around the outside, getting very flirtatious with that tire barrier attenuator at the end of the pit road. That could have ended in absolute tears if she was just a few feet farther to the left. But thankfully for her, she's hauled off onto that position, stayed out of the barriers, but right now is at risk of losing a position here to Wozencroft.
Yeah, I think she's going to have to look for that inside move herself the next time. She's getting really, when I was watching that time as they were coming through the S's, she was just staying on the back of Lockshine and was getting a really good run through 10. Looked like maybe Lockshine was bleeding off a little more speed than she was, and I think she was getting enough of a run that she may look for that inside dive the next lap or two herself to see if she can get by.
And these three are extremely close right now as they're about to enter turn 6 in just a few moments' time. But with all that battling that they've had, it's allowed your leader right now, Jameson Huffman, to extend about a 3-second gap between himself and Lewis Lockshine. He is really drifting off into the sunset here at Sonoma Raceway on his way to a fairly, actually, you know, I'm going to save off on any quotes like that. We haven't hit the halfway mark of this race, but that gap he has currently is fairly convincing as we're seeing some battling continue here between Wozencroft, Overstreet, and Lewis Lockshine. I gotta imagine if these three really start battling hard in the second half of this race, would it allow a driver like Wilson or Lori to close up that gap, because they're about 2 seconds behind them? But I think it could still happen, because any sort of battling, regardless of what class it is here, in iRacing, it could just drag all three of these cars down like a parachute is behind them. So I gotta wonder if Wilson or Lori could get involved in this fight. What do you think, Charles?
Yeah, absolutely. These cars, when you start battling side by side, we see Overstreet did look to the inside that time. Yeah, when you go side by side in these cars, you're basically compromising both cars' lines, so you both go slower through the corner. The longer you stay side by side, the more corners you take side by side, the more those cars from behind get a little bigger in your mirror.
This is some hard stuff all throughout this field. I'm just looking through the left-hand side of my screen with these SDK graphics. I think it's, well, it's not really a battle, but it's still pretty close between Stephen Blethen there in P11 and Raymond Blethen there in P13 with Mark Sherman in the middle of them. That's a pretty close fight farther in the back of the field. So we've got some battles all throughout this field. I feel bad for our producer, Josh, all throughout this season. It has to be like a chameleon looking at about 6 different things at once. Our attention right now is on that battle up towards the front of this field, battling for those last podium positions. I'm not really sure how to take this fight. I don't think there's any sort of way to predict how this is going to end, but I think this will be a nice little bit of discussion here before they hit the hairpin of turn 11 as they start to spread out a little bit. Who do you think are going to be the last two podium finishers? Do you think it's going to be how it is right now of Lockshine and Overstreet, or do you think Wozencroft is going to stick his nose in that?
You know, I want to say, I think Overstreet's a little bit quicker than Lockshine overall over the course of the lap, especially through this back half. But Wozencroft has shown great speed back there as well. I think it's just a matter of who gets the best run on the last lap. So I don't really have a guess at this point. But if I was going to have to make one of those imaginary wagers, I would probably say Overstreet for P2. But you know, it's just up to Lockshine how well he does as a defense. As you see, she just gets right up every time the second half of this second half of the lap. Any gap that he's got she just goes away. She's just that much quicker.
I will say one thing about Megan Overstreet. I've noticed this in every single Ray Esports or Weekend Warriors broadcast I've done with her in it. She is a very patient driver, very zen-like. She doesn't really push the matter too much as we see some drifting going out of turn number 2. But Megan Overstreet, she doesn't really force the issue too much. She's still a very good, very hard racer, but she keeps her nose clean more often than not. So I got to imagine maybe we'll see a driver like Wozencroft get the move done on Megan Overstreet, bump her out of the podium positions, and then we'll see a driver like Wozencroft and Lewis Lockshine come to blows between now and the finish, and that could allow Megan Overstreet to slot back into P2. So I think that prediction of Megan Overstreet finishing this race in second could very well happen. I think it hit the nail right on the head there, Charles. So I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. We still have a lot left to be decided. We're 13 and a half minutes in to this 20-minute affair, 6.5 minutes left to go. So not a whole lot of laps and not a whole lot of overtaking opportunities for these drivers left to go for a move. But Megan Overstreet is looking really racy right now. She may try and force the issue here on Lewis Lockshine before any sort of incident may happen between herself and Wozencroft there to move into the final podium position. So I think we may see Megan Overstreet start to force the issue here a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I've been covering the Weekend Warriors for about 3 seasons now, and I have seen Megan make mistakes, but they're very, very few and far between. She is, as you said, a very patient driver. She's very calculating. She pretty well knows what she can do with the car. It doesn't matter what car she's driving. So yeah, I mean, you know, but Wozencroft, I've seen enough of him, and Lockshine as well, that they're not going to go away. They're just they're going to fight. So it's just going to be who's bravest at the end and who can make the right move at the right time.
One thing I can say for sure about this. Oh my God, Jameson Huffman goes for a spin. Be very careful here on the region. I thought he was going to get T-boned there by Wilson. So that battle for P2 has now turned into a battle for P1. We're looking at a replay now of Jameson Huffman. It's so unfortunate. He was leading by about 4.5 seconds here, and I think he just overcooked it. Heading into 2, clipped that curb a little bit and just spun. Oh, that is such a shame. He'll be kicking himself after that mistake. Coming out of turn 2, he is going to be on the back foot for sure. I think that is as far as I'm concerned, that is a unrecoverable sort of mistake. We're looking at another replay here, another angle going through turn 2, just a little bit sideways there and continued to stomp on that gas pedal and just spun coming out of turn 2. That is such a frustrating mistake for the at one time leader of this race to make. He had a massive gap. It was about 4 seconds if I'm not mistaken, and now he is on the back foot massively, now 5 seconds behind the leaders, and with less than 5 minutes left to go in this race, about 4.5 minutes left to go on the clock. There is no way in hell that he gets involved in this podium fight, so that is such a shame for the driver who was basically dead set to take the win. I blame myself for that, because I was going to put him, I basically said around the 9-minute mark that, hey, he may have a shot to win this thing just of how dominant he has in this race thus far, about a 3-second gap he had at that moment, but then spins later on. Megan Overstreet nearly just wrecked coming out of the hairpin. Little bit of contact between herself and Andrew Wozencroft. Tried to go for a move on your leader, Lewis Lockshine. That's the first time we've said this all throughout this race. Tried to go for the move for the lead going into the hairpin, but got a little bit squirrely there on exit. Certainly help from Wozencroft right behind, but I can't get past that mistake that Jameson Huffman made. That is such a shame. That is so unfortunate. And again, commentator's curse, probably the worst one I've ever pulled off. I partially blame myself for that.
Yeah, I've done my fair share of the commentator curses as well. Yeah, and it's when you're out front and you've got that kind of a lead, and it was just a little simple mistake. I don't think he took too much curb. I just think he got too hard back on the throttle. The car wasn't settled and just lost the rear. Very similar to what Megan did coming out of the hairpin. I think she just a little thunderfoot and the car wanted to over rotate. She was able to catch it. He was not, unfortunately. So he's got his work ahead. I don't think he's going to make it back up there, but he did get past Wilson to get back into P4. So we'll see how much time he can make up. Obviously, he had some good pace because he was able to extend the gap. And it only takes a mistake by one of these top 3, and then he's back battling for a podium position again.
Meanwhile, Josh Soto right behind him has actually moved up the most positions of any driver so far in this race, up 9 from where he started the pits. We thought that he was a lap down thanks to a small little live timing glitch that we had, but he's currently running in the top 5, and I don't think he'll be able to get the move done on Jameson Huffman, just for the simple sake that I think Jameson Huffman is going to be a man on a mission. He's going to be seeing the red mist between now and the finish, kicking himself after that mistake, and he is not going to let that happen again. So I think still Josh Soto to be able to pull out a top 5 result after the start that he had, I think is a very impressive result for the driver currently running in P5, up 9 positions from where he started, as I said. But touching back on that mistake that Jameson Huffman made, it goes back to the sort of questionnaire that we had about which one of these 3 drivers was going to finish on the podium. All of them are now looking to finish on the podium. So I think all of our assumptions, all of our prerequisites about this race were just completely thrown out the window with that mistake. And I gotta imagine with that, the tensions are going to be a lot higher here for this fight. So I gotta wonder who's going to prevail here.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you're exactly right. It's instead of battling for P2, now you're battling for the race win. If we see Overstreet, looks like maybe she's taking that defensive line to try and work the inside of turn 7. As we see Wozencroft looking to the outside. This is going to give Lockshine a little bit of a break there as they started fighting side by side. And so he's got a nice little bit of a gap. We'll see how much Overstreet can close that gap up. She's been really quick on the back half of the circuit.
Ooh, I have a good feeling about Lewis Lockshine right now. I think that small little tussling there between Megan Overstreet and Andrew Wozencroft really just sealed the deal for him. Again, you know, knowing my luck, I probably just pulled off another terrible commentator's jinx, but they're coming to take the white flag this time by. It'll be 1 lap to go, and Andrew Wozencroft going for the send here on Megan Overstreet, heading into the hairpin. I think he's going to have a good run exiting there. I think Megan Overstreet just had to get out of it a little bit to avoid making contact with that heavy concrete barrier on the outside, but she has the inside line heading through turn 12. They're going side by side, going down that start finish straightaway. They just took the white flag, 1 lap to go here from the MX5s here in the Ray Esports Racing League. And as Megan Overstreet and Andrew Wozencroft battle hard, Lewis Lockshine is just pulling off into the distance, a 0.5 of a second gap between himself and the drivers running in the other podium positions. So it's looking pretty good for Lewis Lockshine, unless there could be some kind of truce formed between Wozencroft and Overstreet. It's looking very good for Lewis Lockshine, because those two battling hard, they're costing each other time, and that gap is still increasing now a second. They're still side by side coming out of 4. That basically all but assures that they're going to go side by side again. Coming through 6, Megan Overstreet backs out of it, drops into P3. She's involved in the championship fight here in the MX5, so I think she is taking the P3 result here. She's not going to risk it for P1 and end up with nothing at all. So I think Megan Overstreet realizing the bigger picture here towards the end of this championship battle. Meanwhile, Josh Soto and Jameson Huffman battling hard for the P4 spot here. Josh Soto trying to get the move done on your once leader of this race and your pole sitter from this MX5 fight, but actually Jameson Huffman pulls ahead there. I think that'll be status quo for the two of them by the time they make it to the checkered flag. But meanwhile, up towards the front, the gaps have spread out quite a lot. It's 0.8 of a second separating Lewis Lockshine and Andrew Wozencroft right now. Barely any air separating Josh Soto and Jameson Huffman. We'll take a look at our live timing screens to see if he goes for a move here. Heading in to the hairpin, it's going to be some pretty close stuff here. I think you can see Jameson Huffman did the block there to try and cover the inside line, but I think Soto's still trying to push it hard. A little bit of a bumper there. I think they're giving each other a little bit of a push, but up towards the front, Lewis Lockshine taking a checkered flag here. Andrew Wozencroft finishing in P3, and that's going to be Megan Overstreet rounding out your podium. Photo finish between the two drivers towards the tail end of the top 5. Jameson Huffman prevailing over Josh Soto. That's going to be Wilson in 6th, Lori in 7th, and that's going to be Spallman, Roma, and Green rounding out your top 10. Green quite a long ways back of the rest of the drivers in the top 10, but wow, that race, I mean, we've said tale of two halves probably about 5 times already throughout this broadcast, but that's the only way I could describe it. At one point, I was looking that Jameson Huffman was going to be the dominant force, just driving off into the sunset and taking a commanding win. Next thing you know, he's spun around in the dirt, and all the drivers that were at once battling for the final 2 podium positions were battling for the win. That was a very interesting race that we just had in the MX5s.
Yeah, absolutely was. And I did notice that on that last lap, I think Overstreet, as we're looking here, I think she just got a little wide. Yeah, she did. She just kind of overcooked that corner, turn 4, and gave Wozencroft the inside, and he was able to make the pass and make it stick for the rest of the race. But that also gave Lockshine enough of a gap to go ahead and take the race win.
I think as much as they were battling hard, Wozencroft and Overstreet basically handed that win to your winner here tonight on, I wouldn't say a silver spoon, but a silver platter, I think would be nice to describe how Lewis Lockshine, I mean, he drove his butt off, don't get me wrong.
Did.
I mean, that man was still setting very quick laps. His last lap was a 1:46.2, which was only about 0.3 of a second slower than his best lap of the race. So he was driving his heart off from start to finish. Wasn't the fastest of the 3 of them. That honor actually goes to Andrew Wozencroft, but he just still kept it on track most of the time, hit his marks, and was just able to capture it when drivers farther up the road made a mistake. So very good result there from Lewis Lockshine. I think we'll actually take a look at the results here from this MX5 race here in the Ray Esports Racing League. A very dramatic MX5 race, it must be said, and it's going to be Lewis Lockshine taking the win there in 0.9 of a second over Andrew Wozencroft there in P2. Megan Overstreet rounding out your podium in P3. Jameson Huffman finishing this race in 4th. Not a result that he will be very happy about in any way, shape, or form, or any stretch of the imagination. Whatever euphemism you want to use to describe it, he will not be happy about finishing this race in P4. Josh Soto will, after starting this race from the pits, he claws his way back up into the top 5, gains the most amount of positions of any driver in this race. John Wilson will be finishing in 6th. 6th, Tom Laurie in 7th, Seth Spolman in 8th, Tony Roma in P9, and then Rich Green will round out your top 10.
Yeah, P11 is Stephen Blevin. P12 is Raymond Blevin. Mark Sherman in 13th. Wayne Buttermore in 14th. Justice parked it after one lap to finish 15th. And Joaquin Effinger did not take the start, and so finishes in P16.
That does it for your results here from the MX5 race, and I think before we wrap this broadcast up here on Apex Racing TV, we're going to have a chat with all the podium finishers from this MX5 race, and the first driver that I'm going to bring in is your winner here, Lewis Lockshine. Oops, sorry if I brought you in there mid-conversation, Lewis, there, but very dramatic race from start to finish, had a great turn of fortune after the unfortunate mistake from Huffman there, but how was it out there?
That was fun. That was difficult, I won't lie. It was a battle of trying to stay on track and then trying to keep Megan and Andrew behind, but that was a lot of fun. I've raced against those guys for a little while now, and it's very fun.
Oh, it looked fun out there. It was a hard-fought battle between all three of you. All three of you had your own sort of unique quirks and features and strengths all throughout this track. I was looking through my live time screen and I noticed that in terms of your best lap, you actually were the slowest of the three of them, but you're just very consistent all throughout the race. So do you think in a race like that where it's just hard battling between all of them and all those drivers are pushing right behind you, do you think consistency was what won you here?
Yeah, for sure, because Megan and Andrew were right there with me, and if I made a slightly worse mistake than the ones I were making, they would have got around me easily. But thankfully I was able to just keep my nerves calm and keep the car on the track. And it's really fun racing against Megan and Andrew because we had a mega battle and we're all still on track and finished the race, which is really cool.
Yeah, that was a really hard-fought battle between all three of you. And you mentioned there, one of the things of just, I mean, it's a big saying in the racing world to finish first you have to finish, and you mentioned there the very little margin for error at a race like this when you're battling as hard as you were from start to finish. So what's the most challenging corner for you out here tonight?
I think it's turn 7. It's the carousel going down. It's a long left-hander going down onto the back straightaway. That was my worst corner.
That would actually be turn 6, but yeah, that is a very challenging corner. Just feeling that feeling the ground drop away from you, feeling that front end wash out towards that outside curb there, exiting that corner. I can imagine that was pretty tricky. But just one quick little question before we send you on your way so you can enjoy the rest of your evening. What was the thoughts when you saw, I don't know if you saw it just in front of you or you saw it on your relative, but when you noticed that Jameson Huffman had a spin, what was going through your mind at that moment?
Oh, bro, here we go. Okay, let's go. Let's finish this thing. My eyes turned probably 50% bigger at that time. I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's finish this. I knew I had the speed. I had the confidence to have the speed to win that race and finish in front of them.
I can imagine your pupils were very dilated after that spin there for Jameson Hoffman. So Lewis Lockshine, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary booth. Anyone would like to give thanks to or shout out?
Thanks to Steve Ray for putting the league on. It's a very fun league. I love racing with these guys, and thanks to the broadcast as well. Can't show a battle like that without you guys.
I'll tell you what, it was one hell of a battle to show, and we are glad that you were a part of it. So Lewis Lockshine, thank you so much for joining us, and fingers crossed we'll see you next time out at Road America, my friend.
For sure. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
That was your winner from the MX5's Lewis Lockshine. And Charles, who do you like to talk to?
Well, let's go down the list here, and we'll go to P2, Andrew Wozencroft. Andrew, P2, congratulations. So about the first half of this race, you were running in P4. You had a nice big send down into the hairpin, the final corner. Just kind of overshot it, battling with Megan. And then the next thing you know, Huffman's off in the grass, and you guys are all battling for the race win. How did it look from your perspective?
Charles, it was exactly how it is in real life when I run Spec Me out of here. It's not a really draft-heavy racetrack, so as long as the group stays together, you're good. I mean, I felt bad for Jameson. Jameson had huge pace. I'm sure he just had a slight mishap. Turn 2 gets you. There's a little bump right on the crest, and it can spin you. I'm sure that's what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it looked like, to be fair, as we were kind of looking at the replay. So, well, I will go ahead with the Spec Miatas at Sonoma. Is this your home track? Because it does say you're in California. So, but there's a few. You've got a few to choose from there if you want to call one of them your home.
Yeah, I do. I run with San Francisco Region SCCA, and we're blessed to have Laguna, Sonoma, and Thunder Hill all within about an hour and a half of each other. But this is my home track. I'm from Napa, Sonoma County, Napa County. They're not the same, but they're relatively the same. Good wine in both. But yeah, no, I've driven this. I was telling Megan, I've probably driven this 1,000 times in real life. The group that I run with in real life, they're amazing. And I told that to Lewis and Megan. I felt like this was the real thing, honestly. And this is what's great about this league. The drivers, we've driven with each other for so long that we respect each other. We know our nuances, but we push, but it's clean. And honestly, it made my night.
Absolutely, it was fantastic. We had a great time broadcasting the race and calling it, and it was a great battle from start to finish with you guys. So congratulations on your P2.
Appreciate it.
All right.
That was Andrew Wozencroft, your P2 runner here tonight. And I think for one last chat, we'll bring in your P3 finisher, Megan Overstreet. Megan Overstreet, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary booth. How was it out there?
Oh, that was so incredibly fun.
I mean, it looked awesome from start to finish. I mean, you're involved in that fantastic fight. Had Andrew Wozencroft going for some moves on you, you trying to go for some moves on him, and also having Lewis Lockshine trying to catch up to him to try and battle for, at one point, P2 and then later on for the lead. So how did the race and how did your mindset of this race change after that mistake from Jameson Huffman?
It stayed pretty much the same. I was still trying to just get ahead of Lewis if I could and then see what would happen from there. But we were just so close on pace. I just could never get in a good spot to where I could make a good move that would actually stick without, making any contact, which is what I didn't want to do. So I'm pretty happy with still finishing third overall after that.
I'll tell you what, that was a race that really defied my expectations. I was expecting a track like that, a little bit twistier in nature, that we weren't going to see a whole lot of passes. But I think this track is a pretty big departure than what we're going to be seeing in 1 week's time at Road America. So what do you expect heading into there?
Heavy draft track, it's going to be insane.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Weekend Warriors just visited there this past weekend. So I think there may be, if I'm not mistaken, unless I got the schedule confused in my head, you may have a little bit more seat time than some of the other drivers here in the Ray Esports Racing League. So fingers crossed that we see you there in 1 week's time. Thank you very much for joining us here, Megan Overstreet. Anyone would like to give thanks or shout out?
Yeah, thank you all for doing the broadcast, TV for putting it all on, Grassroots Motorsports and Inside the SCCA podcast, everybody that's watching, and my family that's out there watching. Thank y'all.
Thank you for joining us here, Megan Overstreet, and fingers crossed that we see you next time out at Road America.
Yep, have a good one.
That was Megan Overstreet, your P3 finisher, and she mentioned there the Inside the SCCA podcast. Usually I mention that after the halfway break, but because of the action-packed qualifying session that we had, we didn't get a chance to mention it, so I think real quick before we wrap the show up here tonight, I will mention the Inside the SCCA podcast, which is a great podcast for people who are interested in all subjects relating to the SCCA, whether it be in the track night in America world, whether it be in the road racing side of things, or whether it be in autocross. The Inside the SCCA podcast, posted every Friday and available on the RacingWire Podcast Network, as something for all members of the SCCA to really sink their teeth into. They post it on Friday so you can listen to it on your way to the track. But now, with that subtle plug out of the way, Charles, very dramatic racing that we expected here and very dramatic racing that we got. Final thoughts on the action that we had in both the Formulas and the MX-5s.
Oh, yeah. We got our money's worth tonight, right? So, I mean, the MX-5 race was, the Formula race was very, very good. The Formula V's put on a great show. And then we get treated to this, this battle for the race win here between three that really weren't expecting to win this race from the first half of it. As you said, a tale of two halves. And so they put on a good show, and as they always do. But good, clean racing, and, shout out to Megan for getting the sponsors in too. Just, we'll I think we'll end up making a broadcaster out of her before it's all said and done.
I think we may have to because she got the sponsor reads in better than I did throughout tonight's broadcast. I think Megan Overstreet trying to go after my job. I'm not very good behind the driver's seat though, so I can't really fill her shoes as much as she may be able to fill mine. But anyways, I think before I say that I may get fired here, which I would hope to God I don't. I should probably not joke about my employment status. I think that'll just about do it here from tonight's broadcast. We only have one more race before the runoffs here in Season 11 from the Ray Esports Racing League. Hey, they say that time flies when you're having fun. I think that explains why the season feels like it's flown by so far. The next time you'll see us here on Apex Racing TV is going to be on Tuesday. February the 20th. I nearly said January the 20th there. Tuesday, February the 20th at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific, where we're going to head to the National Park of Speed with those very long straightaways. We're going to see a lot of action and a lot of drivers slipstreaming past each other. I think that's going to be a pretty good race in 1 week's time. As for tonight, I think that just about does it. So for myself, Ron Mullins, Charles Bichelle joining me in the commentary booth, and Josh Wilkie working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your night, and we'll see you all again in 1 week's time.
Are you struggling for consistency in your sim racing? Does your iRating look like a roller coaster? If so, we have good news for you. The way to get more consistent is to first understand what you're doing differently than the professionals. And VRS is the answer. With our competitive subscription, you will have the telemetry, setups, tutorials, and everything else you need to fully analyze your driving. Our data packs and the ability to compare your driving with the best in the world will show you exactly where to adjust your inputs, change your driving line, and shave seconds off of your lap times. And our powerful and precise Direct Force Pro wheelbase and precision pedals are being used by some of the world's best drivers. All these champions agree that VRS hardware is not just the best on the market, it's also priced well below the competition. So if you're looking to upgrade to direct drive and the best pedals in sim racing, VRS is your answer. If you want to get better, get faster, and make it happen sooner rather than later, you owe it to yourself to find out why so many people are switching to VRS. You'll be so glad that you did. Visit www.virtualracingschool.com and learn why the best use VRS.